A mesh market bag. Hi, I'm Kristen and welcome back to my channel, Studio Knit. This mesh market bag knitting pattern will become your favorite eco-friendly summer tote. It's a sweet boho bag with a nice loose weave. It's great as a reusable grocery produce bag. Use it for a farmer's market fashion statement and a stylish summer beach bag. The top and bottom of the bag texture is designed in the Granite stitch, and the body of the bag is from my recent mesh lace stitch. This design is color blocked in 2 different yarn colors. Of course, you can choose to just use one color or as many as you'd like. It's created from the bottom up from the cast on edge and worked in the round, knitted with just one circular needle around and around for a tubular shape. The smaller is sort of a large purse size, and that is 16.5 inches long. That's not including the handles. And the larger version is 21 inches long. The handles, the length is another 14 inches, and the width is just 2 inches. And this bag is slouchy and stretchy, so the size may increase with use. Our knitting supplies are circular knitting needles, size 8 US, 24 inches in length, along with scissors and a tapestry needle. Plant fiber is recommended, and I am using cotton yarn in 2 different colors. So we're calling it color A and B. Color A is the top and bottom, and color B is the middle mesh section. For all sizes, color A yarn, you should have 120 yards. For the mesh section, color B, the smaller sized bag is 200 yards and the larger is 300 yards. Lily Sugar and Cream has a lot of great color options, and I'll have links to all of my supplies in the description below. Get your free written pattern instructions over on my website, Studio Knit. I also have my ad-free printable pattern in my Studio Knit shop available for purchase. So let's knit it up. And using the long tail cast on method, cast on 96 stitches in color A onto your circular needle. Once you have all 96 stitches on your needle, of course you want to make sure not to twist when we join our yarn. And I am just using a little scrap of yarn as my stitch marker here. We're joining in the round, and step 2 is knitting the bottom of the bag in the Granite stitch. The knitting techniques, we're beginning with the knit stitch. I have a feeling you are familiar with this knitting technique if you are feeling confident to knit up this mesh market bag. So we are using the knit stitch. Another technique is purling 2 together. So that's P2 TOG is the abbreviation. And instead of purling 1 stitch, you're simultaneously purling 2 stitches together. This is a decrease stitch. And for the Granite stitch, this is what is giving us that really great lace texture. An increase stitch is knit front and back. The abbreviation is KFB, and that is where you knit into the front of the stitch and into the back of the stitch to increase 1 stitch into 2. We're taking our needle to knit into that stitch, but don't remove it. Knit into the back as well, and you have increased from 1 stitch to 2. And you'll see this decrease technique used throughout the pattern instructions. We continue knitting the bottom of our bag in the Granite stitch. It's a 4-row repeat, but we also are increasing it as we go to give the bag its shape. The final row of the Granite stitch is row 20, and that is where we're switching to color B. It's just knitting all the way around, but color B, for me, it's the white yarn color. We're knitting it all the way around in preparation for step 3, which is the body in the mesh lace stitch. This is a knit stitch pattern I recently posted, and here we are knitting it in the round. So we're yarning over and we're knitting 2 stitches together. These are the techniques for the mesh lace stitch. Again, yarn over is bringing the yarn in front, and then knitting 2 stitches, which is a stitch decrease, knitting it together and following the 4-row repeat pattern instructions for the mesh lace stitch. With just the first 4 rows, we can see that our mesh lace stitch is shaping up already. And we just continue repeating this 4-row repeat until our bag is the length you desire. For the smaller version, it is 48 rows total. And if you'd like to make the larger size bag, which is what I'm knitting up here, it is a total of 72 rows in the mesh lace stitch. Step 4 is knitting the top of our bag in the granite stitch again. So we are changing back to color A for our color block project. And we're just changing our yarn and knitting the top of the bag in the granite stitch. Step 5 is beginning the bag handles in the garter stitch. We're beginning by knitting 20 stitches, K20, knitting 20 stitches. And I just want to show you how to count the bind offs and the knit stitches here. So you're knitting the 20 stitches and you're beginning to bind off. To begin, you'll knit 2 stitches. And then how I like to count the bind offs is once I take that yarn and pass it over, I'm counting that as 1 bind off stitch. Wait, let me get it right there. So that's 1. And then I knit and I bind off, and that is 2. I'm continuing all the way down the row until I have bound off 16 stitches. At that point, I'll have 1 stitch remaining on my right needle, and I am counting that as the first knit stitch coming up here for knit 40, knitting 40 stitches around. This will be the first stitch. And this is how I like keeping track of the knit stitches and the bind off stitches to create the bag handles. I'm recommending placing markers for each section coming up. So I'm using a different color yarn. I have 4 little stitch markers, and you'll just place them to section off each area to easily keep track of your project as you read the pattern. So in row 2, we've knit 20 stitches and then placing a marker right after knit 20. And I recommend placing a marker after each section here. So the next section is casting on 88 stitches. I'm recommending the cable cast on method. So you'll turn your work. So you're holding all of those stitches in your left hand and then taking the empty needle, placing it between those stitches, knitting it through, and then you bring that stitch around and twist it, placing it onto your needle for the first cable cast on stitch. Now, if this is a new technique to you, I have a more detailed tutorial that I will link to in the description for you. And you'll just continue casting on 88 stitches using the cable cast on method. Your one needle that's 24 inches in length is long enough for all of these additional stitches. They'll be bunched and scrunched, but it will all work out, so you don't need to switch to a larger needle. You can if you want to, of course, but there's no need. And we're knitting the handles in the garter stitch. The garter stitch in the round is a series of purl rows and knit rows as indicated in the pattern. And you'll see as we knit along, our handles are all bunched and scrunched up on our 24-inch needle, but it all fits, it all works. It looks sort of ruffly, but once we bind it off, they'll straighten out. And step 6 is finishing. So we are binding off all 232 stitches that we've added with the handles. And I'm just using the basic bind off technique here. And we will cut our yarn and weave in our yarn end throughout your piece, especially because of the changes in yarn color. You'll have different little yarn ends that you'll want to go ahead and weave in your ends and cut your yarn. Because our bag is one piece with just one seam at the bottom, in our finishing, you'll want to stitch that up. I'm using the mattress stitch by first taking our piece, placing it inside out so the wrong side is facing, and with yarn and a tapestry needle, just sew up the bottom in the mattress stitch. I think pretty much any way that you would like to sew the bottom of the bag up will work out just fine. You won't see the stitching. You'll just want to make sure that you are closing the bottom of the bag up because, of course, this is a bag. You do not want the contents to fall out the bottom. And then turning our work right side out again, our bottom is finished. We have this beautiful mesh section. And then we have the top in the granite stitch and our garter stitch bag handles. Now, I always like to wet block my work. It's not necessary, but especially for these handles, I think it will give it a much cleaner look. Also, if you have any little areas that you feel that the yarn is stretched out a bit too much, you might want to just get some yarn with your tapestry needle and tack those together a little bit more closely. And after wetting my piece, I like using these blocking mats and T-pins, even in the granite stitch and the mesh, which looks pretty good fresh off the needles. I find that blocking it just gives it a really great look, especially when you're photographing your knitted work and showing it off to others. I just think that it looks spectacular. I have more great summer knitting ideas for you, so make sure to check those out. And I hope you are inspired to knit up this mesh market bag. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you here next time. Bye!